That's all right. Motion to approve the agenda is moved by Councilor Miller, seconded by Councilor Pierce. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, staff reports. 4.1, Paramedic Services Draft Budget. Are you going to lead off on this, Russ? You're muted.
Through the chair. I actually have a few slides.
Okay.
I know that we just sent out the addendum yesterday, so I can highlight sort of some of the key items, if that would be helpful.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so following committee last week, staff have taken another look at the budget, and we did find a couple areas that we were able to make some reductions in the base budget, and also have provided a second option for the 3 decision packages. So I will just walk us through, and again, the first slide is just regarding timelines and the need for committee to recommend a draft budget by October the 1st. So the first update to the base budget, we took another look at our capital program and are recommending that we defer $50,000 for gym equipment, which is intended for the new headquarters facility. It's not critical that the equipment be there on site when the staff move in. So we have reallocated that to our 2026 capital. And you can see there the impact that has to the transfer to reserves in reducing the $50,000. We also took another look at our paramedic wages and benefits. As we discussed at last committee, we thought that there may be an opportunity to reduce that, and we did find that it was overcounted by 1 FTE. So we have removed $141,700, and you can see that the percentage change to the overall base budget by reducing that amount. So this is an updated chart from last meeting showing, following those 2 changes, what the overall base budget update recommendation is for 2025. So overall, the net levy is now at 14.5%. We were at over 16% previously. As far as the decision packages, we have taken another look and are presenting a second option, or option B. So for the commander, we have calculated a later start date. It should say 2025. But for October 1st, 2025, there wouldn't be as big of an impact to the 2025 budget if we were to delay that to later in the year. We have done something similar for the supervisor position. So for this position, option B is recommending a July 1st, 2024 start, and moving that up a little bit, given that we feel it's more critical to operational oversight. So you can see the difference there between the March 1st start and the July 1st start. We have relooked at the decision package for the additional ambulance. The original decision package included a 24-hour vehicle with a March 1st start, which would require 8 FTEs. Under option B, we've presented information there to do a 12-hour vehicle instead, and a July 1st start. So this obviously wouldn't have as big of an impact on alleviating the system capacity, but certainly it would help. So just taking budget constraints into consideration, we are presenting this as a viable option. And you can see in the decision package option summary, options A, and if committee were to proceed with option A on all three, we would have an impact overall of 11.7%. Then looking at option B, if committee were to approve all three options, there'd be an overall increase of 4.1%. And that's on top of the base budget. And that concludes the slides. So both myself and Russ and our finance staff are here to try to answer any questions that committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, a couple quick ones here. So for the decision packages, as far as the commander is concerned, is that a and I know it's a net new position, but is that going to be a position that will be hired from within, or is that a position that's coming from outside? And there's more to that when I get that answer.
Okay.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Through the chair, we typically would, for a position like that, advertise it internally and externally. Certainly, if we have qualified internal applicants that are a comparable qualification to an external, our preference is typically to go internal.
Okay, follow up, Mr. Chair. Because the reason I'm asking that is, as we know, and it's been duly noted here, as far as staff, we're just there type thing. We've got enough to cover, but so where I'm going with this is twofold. A, if we bring somebody in from internal, which don't get me wrong, I'm all in favor of coming up through internal, that's going to leave a gap somewhere else as well. So it's going to kind of be a vicious circle there to fill that gap that this would leave. And that kind of leads to part B of my question. And again, I'm going to preface this with the fact that I understand the rationale for this, and I agree with the rationale for this position. But if we're talking that it's not potentially, I'm just going option B here, potentially an October 1st start date, would it be possible? Because I'm thinking, okay, hypothetically, if it's an external, they come in October 1st, it's going to take them a month or so to get their feet wet and get on the ground and get things going. Is it possible to push it to a Jan 1st, 2025? Again, I'm just throwing out options there. I appreciate what you guys have come back with here, but I'm just trying to understand, A, is it going to be internal? Because that's going to leave another gap. And B, if it is external, then an October 1st start date really doesn't give a lot of time to ramp up before the year end. So I'm wondering if we could push it. It would only be, well, it would be another, what, 0.5%, right? So thoughts?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's obviously really difficult to predict if we're going to go internal or external. We trust the process that we'll end up with the best candidate and going through that. So really can't answer how that was going to go. In terms of a start date, I just want to clarify if you're thinking Jan 1, 2026 rather than 2025.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
yeah,
because this is for, it's,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Instead of
I
October,
think at
it'll
that
be 2
point,
months later.
Well, Jan 1, 2026, we're really looking at the 2026 budget then. So I don't know that committee wants to make a decision now that would impact the 2026 budget.
Mr. Chair, if I couldn't, I don't want to go on here. In essence, we kind of are with these option Bs, right? We're pushing things out. So tomato, right? I'm just throwing out just conversations here, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, certainly through the chair, as presented to committee, we do have sort of, administrative staffing at or past capacity. So recognizing that it's, you know, obviously a difficult budget year, if there is committee support to add that position somehow into the fold, it would be welcomed. The sooner the better.
Okay. And one final one, Mr. Chair, if I could. Then when it gets to the ambulance, and I appreciate the thought of going the 12-hour vehicle. Again, I've kind of touched on this before. Within that expense is a new ambulance, correct?
Through the chair, yes, there is an additional ambulance.
Right.
It is proposed to be funded by development charges.
Right. So there's still, okay, so if it's all development charges, okay, I didn't know we were able to do that for that, but because I was just thinking, you know, is it possible, again, I revert back to our spares, and I know they're how can I put this? They've seen their better days, some of them, I'm sure. Again, I'm just throwing out options if we can use one of those rather than purchase a new one, because reality is, if we were to put the order in for a new one today, we're probably not going to get it for a couple of years, right? Because we're still waiting for ones from a couple of years ago.
I'd need to defer the question about utilizing the spare to Chief King, if that's a possibility.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are receiving 2 additional vehicles in this calendar year, probably in October, November. All we would do if we were to add that additional vehicle as of July 1st, we'd keep those spares longer than the recommended time frame just to get the vehicle on the road. That's the most important thing.
Right.
We might incur additional costs for overall maintenance, but it would actually alleviate some of the pain that we're seeing out on the road right now with the amount of call volume that's increasing. We've kept vehicles longer than they should, and Deputy Chief Vanderpost has done an excellent job with our partners to make sure that the vehicles are always running there. So we would just keep the existing vehicle longer until the new one has been ordered.
Right, and I appreciate that. Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you. I appreciate that, Russ. Again, because where I'm going here, that, you know, even if we do order it today, we're probably not going to have it in 2026, right? So it's kind of a catch-22. And I appreciate the fact there's backlogs on those. We've talked about that. But anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to add one additional thing. Yes, there are backlogs, and the recommendation from the ministry is saying 50% of your fleet, as outlined in General Manager Stevenson's report. We can go below that, and when we did not have 50% of our fleet, we have an excellent relationship just for the day or two that was required, borrowing from our neighbors, either being Six Nations, Hamilton, Oxford, if we need a vehicle for a day as ours gets repaired. We all share things for that purpose just when we get in a pinch.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple questions for the decision packages. First one is cross-border billing. You're showing the same amount for 2025 as 2024, 103,500. Is that net? In other words, we charge them some money, they charge us, other municipalities charge us, and at the end of the year, that's what we're in the hole for? Is that net? That amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. I'll just use a simple number. If our neighbors did 2,000 calls for us and we did 500 calls for them, the net expense is 1,500 calls that we would have to pay out.
Okay, so we kept in the budget the amount the same. I know it's a bit of an assumption there, but what assumptions went into that? Were we assuming that we were adding an ambulance or keeping it the same when we come up with that 103,500? What were the assumptions made?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was the assumption of increasing call volume and adding the additional vehicle of 12 hours. We hope with the improvements that are made at the Brantford General Hospital with their offload delays and working with the ministry that we can go below that recommended threshold for the amount that we'd have to pay for cross-border billing. But it was taken into account with our call volume growing. It was basically status quo.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say, Mr. Chair, I mean, it doesn't seem like that much amount in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, I don't think having other municipalities come in here is great because it's been mentioned too in various reports when you have them coming in, it tends to add more to the response time. So, second question then, regards to the superintendent or the commander position. I thought it was explained pretty good in the report. You had a review done, and there's some things that maybe are falling through the gaps. I got that. We could be doing it better as far as some administration tasks go. But my question is, at the end of the day, would those two positions, would they reduce our code zeros at all?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are utilizing some of our supervisors right now to respond to calls, to limit our code zeros, but our code zeros are maintained on our frontline vehicles. So it is based on if we are, best way to put it is, if we have 10 vehicles on during a day, if there's not a single transport ambulance available, that is a code zero, rather than having no ambulances and have an emergency response vehicle going to the call. They will still attend to the call, but they're not considered one of our frontline transport units. So that would be a code zero.
Okay, so basically, I think what you're saying, Russ, is they're helping out, but at the end of the day, on paper, it's still a code zero.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, just looking for some more information on the decision packages. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. I'm looking at the decision packages. So and I know you flashed it up, you have the spreadsheet, but I didn't write it down. So in terms of 2026, if we took the option B options for each of the three decisions, what is the total dollar impact then in 2026? Is it 587,000?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd have to revert back to either Heather or Cindy regarding that answer. I don't have those figures.
Through the chair. So option B, for all three, the 2026 municipal net increase is 488,140.
Yeah, in terms of percentages, what is that?
We do not have the percentage listed in our chart in the report, unfortunately.
Have you done a projected base budget for 2026? What does that look like, excluding these decision packages?
Through the chair, the county has not entered into multi-year budgeting, so overall we don't have a base budget projection for 2026.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, I got some questions. In the chart for request for additional info, from 23 to 24, we added half an ambulance, but we didn't add any paramedics or part-time paramedics. How were you able to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was using existing part-time paramedics that are existing on our part-time list that moved up to full-time. And every March, April, we hire new part-time paramedics from the colleges.
Okay, but the FTE numbers stay the same. They stayed at 14.8.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what number you're referring to as our full-time ambulances are 8.5, times that by 8 full-time members comes to 68 with 4 floats, which is 72 full-time equivalents.
Yeah, and that's what it was in 23, and it's the same in 24, even though you added half an ambulance.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did not add an ambulance or half an ambulance in this calendar year.
Okay, so the chart's wrong on number of ambulances then.
I do not have the chart in front of me, but it could be because last time we did an increase in staffing on the road, was in 2023, and it was I believe it was a full 24-hour car. One was launched, I think, in March, and the other one was later in the year. So we staggered the launch of the 24-hour vehicle.
Okay, that's where the mistake is. Then 23 should be 8.5 instead of 8.
Correct. I apologize.
Okay. Okay, so in 24 there was no additions. The wages are going up 9.2% for paramedics. I mean, even if you said 4% for bargaining, which is no way they're getting that much, and 2% for steps, there's still over 3% increase there unaccounted for. How do you explain the large increase without additional paramedics?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll have to revert back to Cindy and Heather regarding those figures.
Yeah, through the chair, we did have a breakdown of the wages and benefits provided to committee last meeting in camera. It is a combination of ongoing collective bargaining, increases in benefits, CPP. There's sort of a variety of elements that contribute to the overall percentage.
Okay, and administrative charges were up even more. I think it was wages for administration. Can you explain that without having to go on camera?
Through the chair, yes. That is attributed to annualizing the addition of the commander position. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And the capital contribution is going up considerably this year because of the need to order 2 ambulances. Is there any chance we could just get by with ordering 1 instead of 2? And utilize a spare vehicle a little longer?
Through the chair, I'll start off on that one, and Russ may want to add. We did do some further follow-up investigation on our ambulances, and the service does have some pretty high standards to meet in terms of keeping the ambulances ready for response. The 2 ambulances that are in the 2025 capital have already been deferred by 1 year. So they have sort of exceeded the recommended replacement timeline, I believe, by already 3 years. So we're really sort of getting to the point where we're investing, quite a bit of money in trying to maintain them on the road at this point. So I wouldn't recommend that we push them off any further than that, but would defer to Chief King if he has any other comments.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The standard or the agreed upon is 5-year frontline, 2-year spare. With the extended delivery dates that the manufacturer is providing right now, we are currently in the process of running these vehicles frontline for 6 years and up to 3 years spare. So we're adding 2 additional years of service, and that relates to the increased costs in our overall maintenance costs. So we've already extended and deferred some of these vehicles, A, because of availability, and B, just because the growth and need of our service. As if we put on that additional 12-hour vehicle, we're going to have to run a vehicle that should have been a spare on the front line longer than recommended.
How many ambulances do we have that are 5 years or less?
5 years or less. I believe there's a chart that was provided. I believe right now we have 6 vehicles that are 5 year or less, but I'd have to refer to the chart.
Okay. And are we projecting a surplus or a deficit for 2024?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to refer back to Cindy and Heather on that.
Through the chair, that report was provided at last meeting, and there was a deficit projected for 2024 at this point in time.
Okay, and how are your surplus and deficits handled?
I'll defer that to our treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the county's portion of the deficit would be covered within ours, and we, through the cost sharing agreement, would bill the actual cost to the city, including that deficit, the overspend.
And what happens in years when there's a surplus?
Then you again, the city would pay the actual cost, so they pay less than what the budget would be, and receive
So the money
their
would
surplus.
flow back to each municipality?
Yeah, correct.
Is it possible to set it up so that any surplus would go into reserves?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be a good idea, and we could, but it would need a recommendation from the committee and both councils to proceed that way.
Okay. That's my questions for now. Councillor Hunt?
So we were looking at, sorry, through you to, I'm not sure either Russ or Cindy, if we're looking at 3 decision packages, I mean, if you were to rank them in terms of what are the most critical ones for the service to, for us to approve, which of the 3 would it be? The additional ambulance, the commander, or the 0.5 superintendent?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's always a priority for the front line dealing with the members of the community. So that one would be ranked number 1. The second one I would take for manpower would be the supervisor. And the third would be the commander. Again, as Councillor Pierce said, January 1st takes a while for somebody to get started. The reason the commander, we've had discussions regarding this, coming in here and changing the start dates of the different decision packages, was the overall view. Yes, we can get our front line moving forward. The overall recommendations from the service review, I would have to say the commander, sorry, without getting into deeper detail, the commander would have to be the third choice.
And adding the additional ambulance, which requires 8 paramedics if it's a 24-hour and 4 paramedics if it's a 12-hour. From a staffing perspective, how readily available are an additional 4 or 8 paramedics?
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently we have 51 part-time staff. The reason we put some of the decision packages off until July's and sometimes an October start is because the new graduation of students coming in from a college. So they graduate at the end of April. They all are applying for jobs and stuff, and we will do an intake probably late May to early June. So we would have enough staff to either fill a 4 or 8-person roster, depending on which one we choose.
Okay, so it's not like we have to also recruit to staff this ambulance, whether it's 12 or 24 hours.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, and it also goes into, if we hire them full-time as of July 1st, it also helps a bit with our vacation coverage as well going into the summer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, second time speakers, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, we know one of the issues we have is the fact that calls that come in aren't triaged. And my understanding is that the province is rolling out across the province the medical priority dispatch system, which triages, and you then give priority to responding promptly to things like code zeros. And my understanding is for the Hamilton area that was to be for 2026, but now do I understand it's being advanced and will be rolled out in 2025, including in our area?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the new updates would be November of 2025. So we get about rather than going into 2026, I would say we have a 6-month benefit.
Okay. And do you have any sense of how that's going to impact the operating budget?
Through you, Mr.
Well,
Chair.
maybe not so much, but more so actually the demand for ambulances.
Through you, Mr. Chair, some of the areas that had put the new MPDS system had a greater chance to defer some of the calls, like we talked about right now. I'd say it will be beneficial to us. However, we will not realize any benefit till probably mid to late 2026 on how the system will roll out.
Okay. And the other pressure point we have, of course, is what's happening at the hospital, and that they're having difficulty hiring the nurses that would be allocated to dealing with patients that come in through the paramedic system. And when do you anticipate that problem will be addressed, that the staff will be in place and will have the beds and can reduce the time that paramedics spend at the hospital?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at our last meeting that we had at the end of August, they have an aggressive hiring campaign right now. They had a great influx of applicants, according to the CEO, that they're basically trying to get as much staff as possible. The ministry, as they've told us, they're not going away until this problem gets resolved. A good thing is, I believe, General Manager Cindy Stevenson sent you Hamilton's information that Jurabinsky went from one of the worst for offload delays to the top 6 in performance. It's the same group of people that we are working with right now to hopefully deal with our offload. But in Hamilton, they've got 4 hospitals. We only have 1. We're limited with real estate. And I hope that our hospital system can hire the staff that they need to help us all out and decrease our offload times.
Okay. Well, historically, our offload waiting time has been in the range of about 40 minutes, right? And on average now, it's gone up to about 55 minutes. If that is dropped back down by, let's say, by 10 minutes, from 54 to 44, what would be the impact upon service and the ability of the service to handle all the calls and not need another ambulance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we're battling things in different fronts. Dealing with the offload delays. Even if we dropped it down from 58 down to 48 minutes, save 10 minutes and stuff, we're still seeing that surge of 4 to 6% increase in the call volume as people are having less and less family doctors. I would say with the 10-minute decrease, we could maintain the service that we currently have right now. If we did not receive the 10% and did not put on the additional ambulance rate, we would be in a deeper deficit responding to people in the community.
All right, but have you ever actually quantified that? Like a 10-minute savings in offload time of the hospital, what impact that has on the need for additional ambulances?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Does 10 minutes represent 1 additional ambulance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's the time on task that it takes. If we decreased everything by 10 minutes, that would allow for the current vehicles right now to increase the amount of calls that you could attend to. But right now, we are at 109% capacity on any given day for the time on tasks, and it fluctuates with what the hospital controls. If the hospital could guarantee our vehicles out within 60 to 90 minutes, right, we would be able to manage our current call volume, but we don't have that guarantee in place. So we're trying to get ahead of the trend with the call volumes that we have. And I'm hoping in years to come that we don't have to ask for additional vehicles to help out with their backlog at the hospital. They're limited with real estate. They're all working their hardest to get our vehicles out. We have seen some improvements to have our vehicles, but we're still sitting at 109% capacity by time on task ratios.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Speaking of time on task, Russ, would it improve the time on task if And in at least some cases, the ambulance loaded the patient up right away and went to the hospital and did any of the normal stuff they do at the scene at the hospital instead, like start an IV or anything like that. Would that reduce
Through you,
it?
Mr. Chair, we always have to, according to our provincial regulations, we need to stabilize the patient before any transport is taken care of. So that would basically be withholding treatment at the scene until they got to a hospital. That's not the way the provincial Ministry of Health guidelines provide us, right? We stabilize the patient and then we transport. So it would be like withholding care on different issues. Again, if somebody has a fractured finger, that's not taking the time, right? It's our time that takes us the longest are on our critical calls, and then also the delays at the hospital.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, does somebody want to make a motion? Councillor Miller.
Well, Mr. Chair, I was going to request if for item 4.11, if we could vote on each of the 4 items separately. And I will, if you're okay with that,
Yeah.
I will move 4.1.1, number 1, that the base budget be approved as presented.
The base budget that was presented today.
Correct.
Yeah. Seconder, Mayor Bailey. Questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries. Capital budget. Somebody want to move? Councillor Miller? Seconded by Councillor
Mr.
Pierce.
Chair, I'll move the capital budget again as presented today, and that with all the items listed, less the gym equipment.
Seconded by Councillor Pierce. Questions, comments? Councillor Miller.
You asked the question, and I was thinking about it too. Could we delay an ambulance? I would love to, but I think we, as noted in the responses today, we've kind of done that already. So you can only kick that can so many times down the road. So I'll support it. Not happy with it, but I will support it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not happy with it, but as was said, it's already been delayed. Any other questions, comments on the capital budget? All in favor? Carried. Decision packages. I'm assuming we want to vote on these one at a time. The first one is the additional ambulance. Councillor Pierce.
Mr. Chair, I'll throw out a motion that we choose option B for all of them, see if I get a seconder and go from there.
Yeah. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Mayor Bailey?
Yeah.
Okay, they're all on the floor, but I think we're going to separate them for voting. So we'll deal with the option B for adding in the ambulance. I guess a half ambulance is what option B come back as. Any questions, comments? All in favor of option B for additional half ambulance? Carried. The next one was the supervisor, I believe. Councillor Miller?
I don't know if the write-up was better for this one or not, but I like this one better than the other one. Simply because in the write-up, in the report, they talked about, okay, yes, you're spending money obviously on the position, but there's also some savings to be had, whether that's in supply ordering or less overtime. So unfortunately, if I could ask staff, we didn't capture that, did we, anywhere? That potential savings from adding that staff? Or is that too hard to add or guesstimate?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, go ahead, please, Cindy.
It's Heather.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Heather. I apologize.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we did capture that savings. It shows in the decision package as a savings off of it to get to the net value.
Oh, that, okay, so that's what that, okay, so you did capture, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I believe, Russ, you said the superintendent was the second priority?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, and it's an increase of 0.7% to the budget.
0.5, July
0.5?
1st start.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong chart then. Okay. All in favor of option B for the superintendent? That carries. And that leaves the commander. Does somebody have the number handy on what that increases the budget by? Going with option B?
0.5.
0.5?
Yep.
Councillor Hunt, you have your hand up?
Not sure if it's appropriate, but is there a potential to defer this position to next year's budget?
We can do that by voting it down.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor? One, opposed? That's defeated.
Was 2 months, right?
Okay, that deals with 4.11. 4.2, proposed optimum resource model, paramedic services. Are you going to speak to this initially, or?
This is Chief King's report, so you can speak to it.
Okay, Russ, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This was the option that I referred to in our previous meeting on September 11th on how to utilize our funds in a more appropriate way. As I said in our meeting on September 11th, continually coming back to this group, our group, the members of the community asking for $1 million every time we need an additional ambulance, I don't think is the best way to utilize our funds. This way, as you can see in the bottom portion of the report, it breaks down the amount of usage that we have currently with sick time, vacation time, bank time, training time, and the utilization of the figures. So really, at the end of the day, providing us with this utilization of $2 million would provide us 7 additional ambulances during the day and 2 additional at night. So that would basically increase our response times to cardiac arrest and other calls, making more vehicles available in a shorter period of time, less reliance on our neighbors, as well as if crews call in sick or people are taking vacation time, we can park 1 to 2 ambulances, still being ahead of our complement of 10 vehicles and 6 on night, and still providing a higher value to the community, causing less time to train new paramedics and part-time staff every year coming out of colleges, as well as utilizing and rewarding our staff that have stuck with the County of Brant and the City of Brantford paramedic service for the years of awarding them a full-time position. This was, as it says in my report, a new innovative way rather than every year just adding additional 1 ambulance at a time. It would greatly benefit members of the community and as well as saving funds moving forward, as whatever money we put into this, the province, I believe, according to our calculations, would give us 50% back in the following year for overall operating costs. I'm open for questions if you require any clarification or further information.
Yeah, Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Russ. So thanks for this, Russ, and I appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking here. Question I have, so you're talking of, with this idea of there would be a purchase of 6 new ambulances, correct?
That would be, according to our calculation, yes, there would be, well, now that the other one that is approved through development charges, it would be the purchase of 5 ambulances, and I'm not sure how many more we could get out of future development charges to decrease the purchase of the 5 now.
Okay, so where I'm going with this is, again, with the delay that it takes to get ambulances, if we were to say, again, hypothetically, if we were to say, we want to try and implement this for 2027 or 2026, two questions. A, do you feel that if we were to order those ambulances now, we would have them by then? And the second part of that is, when you're ordering these ambulances, do you need to put the whole, do you need to pay for it in full before they'll start to make it? How does that work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've done my research right now, and any ambulances that we purchase right now would start to be delivered in June to August 2026. So it'd be a half-year implementation. What we put into the capital budget is to do the study, as our previous response plan went from 2015 to 2024. We would rely on a consultant to verify our figures, verify our deployment. That's our goal now. Again, this is a new innovative concept that I have worked through to the best of my ability, but I do need a third party to verify the validity of this and to make sure that it would be successful before spending the money.
Right, and I appreciate that. There's nothing wrong with an extra set of eyes on it for sure. But what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that if all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed, and you have somebody else look at it and say, "Yep, this is a great idea. Let's do this." So with the price for these new ambulances, okay, it's a 6-month turnaround. That's quicker than the other ones. That's fine. Do you have to pay the entire price of the ambulance at time of order? Or do you have to pay 50% and then the other 50% when you get them? How does that work?
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently right now, it is a $60,000 deposit before the vehicles arrive.
And the total price of one is?
Well, no, so $60,000 is just for the deposit on the ambulance itself. The current price right now, I believe, is $225,000. If it's a fully loaded ambulance, with all the stretchers, monitors, and everything else, I believe I don't have the figure in front of me. It would be over $300,000.
Okay, so the long and short of it here is, we would have to come up with $360,000 to order these 6 ambulances, and the rest would be due when they're available. Correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions for you, Russ. So, Russ, just to be clear then, so this idea, suggested idea, will be looked at in 2025, right? Through that $80,000 study?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that is our timelines. Now that the capital budget has been approved in the initial stage, we can start outsourcing a consulting firm to verify our figures.
Okay. And you talked about the uniqueness of the idea and the innovative idea. And you're sure no one else is doing that? And then the reason I'm asking is that article on Hamilton, I was thinking they did some magic. Well, they didn't. They threw on 10 new ambulances. So are they kind of going that route as well, do you suspect, with the 10 new ambulances thrown on in Hamilton?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Hamilton has been requesting those 10 ambulances for about the last 3 to 4 years. It was just that it was approved through their budget cycle. We're trying to model it similar to, we'll say, the OPP and other fire services of overstaffing those models. Currently, right now, I have not spoken to Chief Sanderson, but I think it's the 10 vehicles that he received was just to maintain service within the community and their response times.
Okay. Well, whatever they did, like the 10 and other things, they did get it down. Or they reduced their code zeros by almost to nothing, so that was pretty good. So, okay, well then we'll look forward very much to seeing that report in 2025. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Hamilton, with the help from the ministry on their offload delays and a few things, are about a year to 18 months ahead of us. The ministry started out with London and helping out with their offload delays. Hamilton, I believe, was next. And we're about the 4th or 5th down the line, so we're about 18 months behind. So we're banking on some success with the ministry, having already done this in some communities, to make our service better and to increase offloads.
Okay. I got some questions on this. The 2.9 for sick, vacation, overtime, is that in a reserve right now?
No, that is, I would say through Mr. Chair, that is just what we spend out on a yearly basis. So that question would have to go to Heather, but I do not believe it's in a reserve.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, that amount would not be sitting in the reserve. It would be in the actual budget amount.
Okay, so if we don't need that money for sick, vacation time, overtime, can we reduce the budget by that amount?
Through you, Mr. Chair, those funds that we're referring to, the 2.9, is a complete package rather than people calling in sick or vacation and backfilling people every time that somebody is off the road. It's a complete package. So that 2.9 would be utilized rather than waiting for somebody to call in sick or waiting for a vacation time or waiting for the request of stat time. That would fund those additional 7 ambulances on the day and 2 additional ones at night to avoid that last minute call in and overtime associated with it.
Okay, so if you went forward with this, if someone did call in sick, then you'd take one of the extra 7 off the road.
Yeah, and it might only be one person. We'd have, what we would do is we want to maximize our coverage in the community. And even if only one person called in sick out of all 17 during the day, we could put them on a rapid response vehicle, still responding to calls, still stopping the clock and providing care to people in the community. We'd maximize out our system to the best of our ability.
Okay. So by utilizing this money to put the extra 7 ambulances on, you wouldn't need money for overtime. You wouldn't need money for sick time, to backfill sick time, because you could take an ambulance off the road if you have 2 or 3 off sick. What about vacation time? I mean, everybody's still going to want to take their vacations.
Through you, Mr. Chair. According to our collective agreement, we can give people 7 people off during a given day. So if I took 2 ambulances off during the day and 1 at night, that's 6 people already. And I'm still maintaining my base coverage currently right now. So we would be running 15 during the day and we'll say 7 at night. Or we could be running 14 during the day and still the 7 at night. It's balancing out taking people off the road. There'll never be a completely zero of overtime. If we have 9 people call in sick one day, the overtime would still be a factor of moving forward. But we're minimizing last minute downstaffing, call-ins. We are overstaffing on our existing complement, the 10 and 6 we currently have right now, to maximize out our coverage. So again, if people call in sick or vacation time, we'd be able to manage and mitigate that to avoid overtime and additional call-ins.
Okay. Would it still work if you added 5 additional ambulances during the day? And would that reduce the cost a little bit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with my calculations, we would need the 7 to maintain what is required by having 7 people off according to the CBA and our overall averaging for sick time on a daily basis. Anything less than 17 during the day and 2 at night would result back to overtime and backfilling people, and then also having a part-time list.
Okay. Seeing no further questions on this, is somebody prepared to make a motion? Councillor Pierce.
I'll just move to receive for now and see what he comes back with in the report.
Second by Councillor Miller. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move the resolution to receive. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay, the agenda has an in-camera. Is there something, I didn't see anything that we needed to deal with in camera. We don't need an in-camera? Okay. With that then, our next meeting, oh, it's not on here. November 5th?